What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to another edition of the NFL Weekly. It is week 15 in the NFL. We are 4 weeks away from putting a bow on the regular season. Crazy how quick it goes. As of course, we are recording here a little bit of a change. We're recording on a Thursday, the 14th of December. And of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I am doing well, and like you just said, NFL Week 15. We were just talking preseason. We were just talking, wow, how long is it gonna be before basketball starts? Hey, what about Del Mar? What about the Breeders' Cup up in Santa Anita? All that has gone by the wayside. We are now looking at Week 15 of the NFL season, playoff picture coming into focus, and 11 days and just a few hours of shopping left, folks. So you better get your Christmas shopping done. And unfortunately, I was remiss last week. I hope all of my Hebrew friends had a wonderful and blessed Hanukkah season this past week. Samit Shalom to everybody.
Amen. Amen. That's always a tough one with Hanukkah because it doesn't quite line up. Obviously, I'm not Jewish, so Christmas is, the 25th. But it always seems to be a week or two before, and I agree. It always kind of slips through the wayside. We're over there trying to figure out what we're going to get done in the next few weeks, but couldn't agree more. But with week 15 now here upon us, there's only a few teams that technically are eliminated. The AFC is wide open. It's incredible how wide open it is, but overall, this has been a season of a whole lot of WTFs where we're kind of, hitting ourselves going, what is going on? Especially when it comes to these picks. Now, as I did mention, we are recording Thursday. Myself, I'll hold my hand up. I had to take a day. So we won't be covering the Thursday night game, which unfortunately is the Raiders and Chargers. Now, it's not any playoff. Technically, these teams are still in the hunt, but it's not really a playoff implication. And it's Aiden O'Connell versus Easton Stick. So yeah, by the time this podcast dropped, that game will be done and dusted. Enjoy it if you'd like. But Raider Jim, any thoughts on that game or overall Week 14 in the NFL?
Well, I'm going to look real quick at Week 14, and 1 week before that, we have two games over the course of two professional football games. 9 points were scored. And I am referring, of course, in Week 14 to my boys, the Raider Nation, who could not beat the Vikings after the Raider defense holds the Vikings to 3 points. In a home game, they could not get into the end zone. They couldn't get in field goal range, or at least didn't take advantage of it. And wow, what a sad state of affairs up there in Las Vegas. But it was interesting because you and I, over the past couple of weeks, have been guardedly saying that it looks like things are, the ship is righting itself, and it looks like we have a good idea of what's going to be happening going down these last 5, 6, 7 weeks. And lo, if the adversity didn't rear its ugly head in a real evil way last week, we had the Giants take out the Packers. You saw the Titans take out the Dolphins by 1 point. You saw the Saints took out the Panthers, which, that was kind of an expected one. But you saw the Bears go in and take care of business against Detroit. I didn't expect that. When you saw, not only did the Jets take care of business against Houston, they did it handily. And then, oh my goodness, and then the Colts, they can't get their act together, so the Bengals come out of nowhere. It was just a real head scratching week. The Jaguars and the Browns, there's another one. You can't look at the scoreboard from last week and go, oh yeah, I expected that. I didn't expect the Buccaneers to win. I didn't expect the Chiefs, and I'm sure we're both going to have something to say about that game. I think the only game that was really out there that I was okay with from the outcome, those two games would have been the Broncos taking care of business against the Chargers, and even more so than I thought they would. I thought they would at least cover the spread, and I thought they would get the win. But then the other one was, of course, the 49ers taking care of business against the Seahawks. 49ers are looking very, very strong and very, very quiet off to the side right now. I would not want to face the 49ers in the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, totally agree. On my side of things, obviously got to, address the elephant in the room. Eagles for a second straight week got taken out to the woodshed and they got beaten pretty handily. I can't speak too much to the game, as I was telling Raider Jim. Watched the Cowboys' first drive. Saw how that went. Watched our first drive and went, uh-oh. And then the Jalen Hurts fumble happened, and I said, you know what? Maybe tonight's a night where we're gonna watch some Netflix or whatever I ended up watching. So I didn't watch the second half. Look, this is a team that has gotten their butts kicked the last 2 weeks, and you could say, oh, well, it was against, two really good teams, and that is correct. However, the Eagles need to be the best of these three teams. The AFC wide open. I think the NFC is kind of the opposite. I think the Niners are head and shoulders not only above anybody in the NFC, but if the Niners stay healthy, I don't know how anybody beats them. And then obviously we saw what the Cowboys not only did last week, but have done pretty much all season. You take out, we can make fun of them for the Cardinals situation, and obviously the Niners took them out and beat them up pretty good. But a lot of teams can say that going forward. It's tough as an Eagles fan. However, if you look at the way everything's shaken out, we're going to get to a quick little playoff picture here momentarily. But at the moment, the Eagles are the 5 seed. I don't think that holds. I think the Eagles need to take care of business. We'll get to that game, but I think they need to take care of business against Seattle. And then a pretty favorable schedule. Well, twice against the Giants and then against the Cardinals. So, might have a hiccup here or there, but if the Eagles win out and, the Cowboys have to win out as well, a lot of tough matchups coming up for the Cowboys. So I still feel good about the Eagles in terms of winning the division, but there's, you're going to have to beat one, maybe both of those teams that just beat you up pretty good. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think for me, usually I have 3 things I like to highlight. This past weekend, there's only one main thing that jumped out to me, and it's the behavior of Patrick Mahomes. And now I've been a fan of Patrick Mahomes, and I still am. But I'll tell you this right now, that little outburst on the sideline, I understand, being frustrated, but you having to be restrained by 3 or 4 players to get to a referee or anything like that, that's a bit much for me. And then to essentially ruin I'm not a big person on sportsmanship. I like to see it, but I don't hold, people to a standard of sportsmanship. But when you're yelling to Josh Allen about how terrible the call it is, Josh Allen's not here for it. And guess what? Josh Allen probably has a catalog of missed calls against you the last 3 or 4 years, like many teams. And then on the other part of it, to kind of double down in the press conference and to say, you just got to let the boys play. Well, Mr. Mahomes, let me remind you, bring you back to last February. Where I don't think you were singing that same tune when James Bradbury was called for one of the more ticky-tack holding calls that essentially gave the Chiefs an opportunity to run it down, kick the field goal, and win the Super Bowl. So you can't have it both ways. And now I will say he did kind of walk it back. He did apologize for the remarks to Josh Allen and things like that. But one of my biggest things that I look for in athletes that kind of endear me to them is self-awareness. And I don't think it's really in a lot of, and when it comes to rich people in general, but athletes and me, and entertainers, not a whole lot of self-awareness. And for Patrick Mahomes to have so little self-awareness to complain about a penalty, by the way, that was an obvious penalty. Like it wasn't even close. I just think you probably maybe need to look in the mirror. And we'll see what happens going forward. I think for the Chiefs, the way their schedule lines out, I would not be surprised to see this team sneak their way into the 1 seed, going forward. But I was not a fan of what I saw from Patrick Mahomes from on a play that was amazing as well. Yes, he's lined up off sides, but as we said right before, wow, what an unbelievable, I don't know if it was a play call or just the presence of mind for Travis Kelce to make that throw. But yeah, he was well offsides. But
Yeah.
Raider Jim, your thoughts on what I call the Mahomes meltdown?
That was so uncharacteristic.
It was.
I mean, even in where it was very much part of his playing days protocol, when Philip Rivers lost it on the field, you just expected it. That was Philip Rivers. He played with that level of passion and intensity. It was never because he was truly a poor sport. That was just his intensity always got the best of him. I even wonder, because they have had, and we have talked about it week in and week out, drop pass here, drop pass there in the end zone. They're fighting so hard. As hard as they're fighting, 5 losses. 5 losses. Was that misdirected anger? Would he really like to go up and grab that wide receiver and say, what is your ever-loving problem that you don't know where to line up? That's the guy he should have been screaming at, not an official, not at Josh Allen. And I'll tell you, I had a friend of mine who likes to watch football. She appreciates the game of football, doesn't really understand intricacies. So I was explaining, and she says, "Oh, so they should have told him." I said, "He should have looked, maybe," and they would probably tell him. I said, "But you know what? I go back to these guys have been in the league, even if it's their second year, their first year. They're professionals. They're getting paid 6 to 7 figures to the left of the decimal to play a game. That rule hasn't changed.
Never.
You can't line up that. I mean, if your nose guard decided he wanted to line up, with his front hands beyond the football, they're not going to not call that. They're going to call him immediately. They're not even going to let him snap the ball after they set. So, yeah, it was a bad look for Patrick. But I will tell you, more importantly, as an organization, I don't know. Chiefs getting the number 1 seed right now. They got a long road ahead of them because there's 4 games left in the season?
Yeah, they're going to need some help from Baltimore, but
And
I believe they
Baltimore's
have
got
a
to
really
lose.
easy schedule.
Baltimore is 10-3, and then you've got the Dolphins at 9-4. So
Yeah.
wow. Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah, and 2 other things. Besides the offsides call, I did see a screenshot. I think it was one of the tackles. He wasn't on the line of scrimmage either, by rule. So, and now that wasn't called. So, maybe that flips. If Tony lines up on side, maybe that's what we're talking about. Oh, the Chiefs got away with one. But the other thing, like you said, with the looking at the official, that's a courtesy. The referees are not forced to tell a wide receiver whether they're onside or, and he was the slot wide receiver. So he's not 10 yards away. He is essentially the closest wide receiver to the ball to see that. And I love the quote from, I think it was Carl Sheffers, because they had asked him, did he look or whatever, but he goes, the ref or our referees, it's their discretion on whether or not to tell them to back up or not. But his final sentence was, but it's very difficult when the player is so offsides, the side judge can't see the football. So even if I think Kaderi Toney looks at him, he goes, I don't know. I literally can't see the football because you're so far offsides. Bonehead play, no doubt about it. Dropping passes, okay. Because guess what? I would probably drop passes, but I know I could line up on side. I've never played a down of tackle football. I probably only made it to flag, church league flag football. I was never called offsides for, so I can give you a pass on the dropping of the football because, okay, hey, I can't do that sitting on my couch. I can pull up to Arrowhead and line up onside every single play. Just do not throw me the ball because I'm standing there and getting in the fetal position after the ball snapped. But I can line up onside. So no excuses. And we'll see. It's they're playing New England. We'll get to that game momentarily. So it's going to be interesting. But I completely agree with you. Misdirected anger 101. He needs to be yelling at the offensive side of things, not the referees who are just doing their job really for the first time in quite some time. And also too, last week or 2 weeks, with against Green Bay, I thought there were more egregious pass interference calls.
Yes.
And Patrick Mahomes literally said, "I'm okay with it. Let the boys play." You can't. I don't know. It's crazy to me. And also one final thing, also on the Cowboys' first drive, and they went down, scored a touchdown. A referee threw a flag for a hold, and it was picked up. And I watched the replay, and it was a hold. So referees do pick flags up, not when you're almost a yard offside. So
right.
Just throwing that out there. But with that being said, before we do get to the game picks, one moment to check out the current playoff picture. We won't get into the tiebreakers because way too much has to happen for that. But of course, as always, not as always, as of late, 7 playoff spots to be had. Only the top seed in each conference gets that vaunted bye and home field advantage through their conference playoffs. Of course, in the AFC, as we said, Baltimore is the 1 seed at 10-3. Miami at 9-4 is the 2 seed. Kansas City, you don't see them at the 3 seed this late in the season too often. They're 8-5, just ahead of Jacksonville. They do have the tiebreak over Jacksonville because they did beat them head to head. And then the wild cards, I think this is going to change, but as of now, we have the Cleveland Browns at 8-5, and then the smorgasbord of 7-6 teams. Currently, the Steelers and Colts have the final 2 playoff spots, but hot on their tail. You have the Texans, Broncos, Bengals, and Bills all at 7-6. I'm not going to get into the Chargers because I know they say they're in the hunt, but they are not. And then on the NFC side of things, kind of alluded to it. Obviously, the Niners at 10-3, they are at the top. The Cowboys, they are back up into the 2 seed at 10-3, top team in the NFC East. Obviously, don't have the tiebreaker over the Niners. The Lions are at the 3 seed. The Lions, I believe, will play the Cowboys coming up in the next few weeks, so keep an eye on that one. Buccaneers, look, someone's got to win the NFC South. And currently it's the Buccaneers. And of course, as the NFL does it, division winners get priority. So they are going to have a home playoff team, or a home playoff game, I should say. And then of course my Eagles in there at 5. And then we drop, Eagles are 10-3. And then we drop down to the Vikings as a 6 seed, are 7-6. The Packers currently are a playoff team. They're 6-7, followed by the Rams, Seahawks, Falcons, and Saints, all at 6-7. And you know what? Looking out for my boy Tommy Cutlets. I'm going to include the Giants in the playoff hunt as well. They're 5-8. They're playing good ball. Interesting stuff there. But any thoughts on the playoff picture so far, Raider Jim?
Maybe it's me. Maybe I don't remember because it was, you were back in the day when I was a kid and all, or even not that many years ago, you relied on opening the paper and looking at everything and trying to digest it that way. Now it's just like, countless pages you can go to, countless links. But I am looking right now. I've got the NFC standings up in front of me, and to look at the playoff pool from position after the Vikings. So you go from 7 to say, let's see, we'll go 7 to 11 when we get down to the Saints, because those teams are all 6-7. You have teams that aren't playing 500 football, and they are in the playoff hunt. I mean, it's somewhat of a travesty. I don't know if travesty is the right word, but when I think about what they charge to go to a playoff game, what they get paid to go to a playoff game, and things like that, and it's just shakes my head, because is the level of competition, using that word that I used before you hit record, is the game getting too diluted by too many things? Stretching out that schedule of regular season, reducing that preseason schedule, don't tackle the quarterback. As you were mentioning to me, next year it may be a different way to tackle wide receivers, because God forbid we hit them too hard or drop them the wrong way. Wow, what's happening to this game?
Well, And one other part of it too, and maybe it happens every year, but this is just the, the recency bias. But I don't know if I've ever seen so many backup quarterbacks being put
No,
in positions of like importance. By this time, certain teams have, okay, Andy Dalton, we brought him in to kind of see if we can make the playoffs with him. We're not going to. Let's bring the kids in and see what we got. Stuff like that. But, you're looking at Cincinnati, and they're looking okay. Jake Browning is not Joe Burrow, but he's not Tom Boyle or Tim Boyle, or something like that. Might be able to get him in, but I think it gets to the point of sometimes we say all you need is a ticket to the dance. I don't know if you can make that case for a lot of teams, especially in the NFC side of things. I mean, look, I'll put the Eagles into that, but they're that group of three right now. And I don't think any other team,
no.
I mean, even on the road, I don't think the Lions scare the Eagles in a road playoff game or the Cowboys. So it's interesting to see that, but I think right now, I don't know what the answer is. Because I mean, I do know what the answer is. It's shortening the season. 17 games. It's just hard to expect these players to get through 17 games with the level of physicality that we have playing now. But I obviously know that the NFL is never going to go less games. It's like baseball. I love baseball. Yes, it's 162 games. It's too long, but they're never going to go back. We're talking about money that is being lost. That is not in the vocabulary of the NFL. I don't know if maybe a second bye week would help. You know, we make jokes about it, but when do we put flags on the quarterbacks? When do we just put and at this point, would I rather see Joe Burrow? Now, Joe Burrow's maybe a tough situation because I don't know if it was necessarily a contact injury. I think it was just his hand. I don't know. That was a whole other thing. But would I rather see Joe Burrow playing right now or see a quarterback get lit up week 3? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is because I love physicality in football. But if we're kind of gearing towards the other side of it, I don't know. But I agree with you. There's a lot of kind of muck at the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And I think it is that 7 seed as well. That, we're in year 3 of the 17 playoff. And I don't think we've seen a 7 seed even win a playoff game.
Right,
quote me on that, but I don't think so. So I don't know. Now, once again, they're not going to go back down to 6. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting. Now it is, of course, one game, so you never know. But a lot of, like you said, muck at the bottom of both of these conferences. Even well, AFC maybe not so much. There's just a lot of
mediocrity.
The NFC is just kind of, I love Josh Dobbs and the Vikings side of things, but they've came back down to earth real quick.
And as we segue into your picks that you've got, the first one you've got listed is, of course, the Saturday game. It's going to be Denver against Detroit. Going back, tying this into the playoff picture outlook, let me tell you about Denver. If I was anybody, I'd be careful because as a kid, when I was in elementary school, when I was in high school, and it wasn't until I got out of high school, somebody figured out you got a bit of a learning disorder. Now, not to say, I mean, and it was not so much I couldn't do the work, it was the comprehension. And so I would stonewall. I would just get there and I'd be like, sorry, can't go any further, don't understand what you're saying. I can tell you the answer to that math problem. I can't tell you the steps to get to that answer. And what has happened with Denver is they've figured it out. They have figured out Peyton and Wilson are in sync. Everybody better be careful because I think that they will take care of business, not just this week, but then you look at their last 3 games. Patriots, Chargers, Raiders. You talk about easy picking. This is almost fish in a barrel for these guys. But anyway, so that was my last thing on the playoff picture. Watch out for those Broncos, and I'll let you lead into our picks.
Yeah, and I'll add one more to that as well. And it's going to be tough for them to get in. But Buffalo, I don't think anybody wants to play Buffalo if they make it into the playoffs. Josh Allen, the way he's playing right now. But at the same time, the Broncos have a much clearer path. You talked about the schedule, a much clearer path to the playoffs than the Bills do. And we'll of course get to the Bills in a bit. But yeah, perfect segue into our game picks. We'll focus on one of the Saturday games. I think all three Saturday games technically have games or teams over 500, but they're 7-6s. So look, we're going to focus on the real good one. I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup. The Denver Broncos at 7-6. They're heading to Detroit to face the 9-4 Lions, who are reeling a bit. The Lions are going to be 4.5-point favorites, and the over-under sits at 47.5. Raider Jim, this is the AFC West side of things. You'll get us started. What are your thoughts?
Well, like I just said, Denver is coming around at the right time. They're traveling in opposite directions of the Eagles, and I'm not, not taking a shot at your boys, but I'm just saying where Eagles came out of the gate, it's just like these cats are unbeatable. But now they're not getting the breaks. They're getting the fumbles. They're getting the not bad, but they're getting a very challenging schedule as the last few weeks. Denver, on the other hand, has come around. They've stuck with it. They've got themselves together. And like I say, Coach Payton and Russell Wilson, wow, if now that they're in sync, they're going to take care of business. They're going to go into Detroit. It's going to be perfect weather because they're playing inside the dome, so the elements aren't going to be anything for them to worry about. And I think they are going to pick apart the Lions defense. I think they're going to have a great combination of, passes all over the field. Short, medium, long. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants. Probably keep it in the medium to short range, and then they will every now and then get those nice blocking schemes up front and free up some of the backs. Detroit and the Denver defense. Denver defense is going to be out there playing the game. I don't know that this is going to go over 47.5. It should, but really, I can see this topping out at like a 23-20 or a 24-23 even. But at -4.5 favorite for Detroit, give me Denver with a 0.5 point. So Denver +5, and I'll keep it under 48.
I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to take Denver on the money line. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Detroit. I'll be honest with you. If Justin Fields and Matt Eberflus can come into your place and take care of business, or no, I take that back. It was in Chicago, but and then if you look at that Detroit, the Chicago game in Detroit earlier in the season, Chicago dominated that game for 3 quarters. So 7 of the 8 quarters they played against the Bears, they were dominated. I think Russell Wilson and the Broncos have a lot more to play for. Detroit is probably going to win the division just by falling forward. I think they probably only need to win one more game. I don't see Minnesota or Green Bay getting to 10 wins. So they probably only need to win one more game to win the division. They're not going to move up into the 3 seed. They're definitely not going to drop down to the 4. So they're kind of stuck where they are. Not stuck, but they're locked in, I should say. Obviously, Denver, a lot to play for. And this is kind of their last little hump, right? Get over this hump, and then you already outlined the schedule. You were able to go to Detroit and get the job done. You'll feel good about those 3 teams going forward. Really, really interesting. Now, I did misspeak. I think a few weeks ago, I thought Denver played Kansas City one more time. They don't. There was just a really unmemorable game. I think Kansas City beat Denver 19-8. It was like maybe on a Thursday night or something. So I forgot about that one. But the division is also still in play, even though Kansas City will really, really have to fall over themselves. But I mean, we've seen it. But I like Denver here, and I think we're going to get over 47.5. I am not impressed. The Detroit is on the right track, but they are only going to go as far as that defense lets them. Their defense might be, I hate to say it, but outside of the Eagles, they might have the worst defense over the last few weeks of the contenders. So I like Denver in this one. It's a Saturday night. With all due respect to the Lions and Ford Field, I don't see that as a massive home field advantage. So yeah, I like Denver on the money line. I'm saying that now, but maybe when it's time to actually put some money down, I might take the spread and play it safe. But I really like Denver in this one. But
money line is at 225 right now.
Oh yeah, that'll get my attention. Definitely get my attention. Moving on to one of the more lopsided spreads we're going to be talking about, actually the most lopsided spread by far we'll be talking about. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're heading to Foxborough to face the Patriots. The Chiefs are 8-5, and they're going to be 8-point favorites. The over-under here sits at 37, and I only laugh because you don't see a spread of anything more than like 3 or 4, but over-under that low. But that's what we have when you're talking about the 3-10 New England Patriots. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Kansas City looking to bounce back against Bills boys.
Everything in the world of logic and reason says, okay, they should cover the 8.5. They should, and I even think this should be an over, because I think Kansas City is going to come out and try to make a statement with scoring points. Weather's not going to be that big of an issue. There might be some light rain, if anything, mainly just cold, but there's not going to be any snow, no flurries, nothing like that. And let's face it, New England just isn't a good team. At the same time, did anybody think against a Steeler defense, which isn't, the steel curtain or anything, but they're not a bad defense. But New England went out and ran up 21 points against these guys. I didn't expect them to get 21 points, and yet they did. They might pull a magic trick and score 14. I doubt it. But they're not going to win this game. They're just not going to. I see Kansas City covering this one. I may take a full point on this and keep it at 7.5, because they may just not want to go out and run it up too much, and they're not going to be concerned about the spread. They just won't. But over 37, I think definitely. Maybe give me a half point, make it 36.5, because I can see this going 24-13, game over type of a thing. And one other remark on the Patriots. There's been a lot of chatter in San Diego's newspapers. I don't know if it's anywhere else. Is Bill Belichick already a done deal in New England? Is Bill Belichick going to head to San Diego, or excuse me, Los Angeles, to coach the Chargers? If he does, if that comes to fruition, I'm going to give you a date in history that you weren't even around yet. June 8th, 1973, when you got the San Diego Union and you took off the rubber band and you open it up, and the big headline was, Chargers sign Johnny Unitas. Are you kidding me? Old Johnny just was so pissed off at the Colts, he wanted out any way he could. So he signed for the previous ownership before the Gene Klein, Mr. Klein, before the Spanos family took over. But I can see the Spanos is thinking this is a great move and bringing in Belichick, because they don't see the writing on the wall. So we'll see what happens with Coach Belichick. But again, every time I kept reading these little blurbs, it was like, everybody was all fired up when they signed Unitas,
Yep,
years ago. So.
Well, and I'll speak to the Padres side of things. Up until Peter Seidler, took over the team, it was the Padres bringing in a Mike Piazza at 41 years old, or a Greg Maddux at 38. Even though Greg Maddux had some really good years with the Padres, but it's the point of, these guys were stars 10 years ago. Let's see if we can put some butts in the seats, and that's kind of what it is. Now, in terms of that report, that got, I think on Tuesday, it was Tom Curran, who is in the know when it comes to Patriot stuff, pretty much said that the Patriots and Belichick have already agreed that they're going to kind of part ways. And it was decided after that Germany game, where it was 10-6. And other reports have come out and refuted that, that report is true. But I can't imagine if you're Robert Kraft and you're watching this and you're Bill Belichick, I can't imagine Bill Belichick wants to develop another quarterback. And I think the only holdup I would say with Belichick to the Chargers is, I don't know if Spanos can afford Bill Belichick.
There's that.
Spanos is NFL owner, or sports owner poor. And of course, I obviously preface that with sports owner before that, worth a lot of money, but not in the sports world. He is essentially a minnow, in that world. So I don't know. I don't think Bill Belichick's, out here looking for another $20 million deal, whatever it is. But I do think the Chargers are going to be able to say, hey, Tom Telesco's gone, Brandon Staley's gone, or at least we expect that. Bring Bill in, see if he can, work something out with this defense and bring in some of his boys to, Bill O'Brien and Justin Herbert. Who knows what happens there. But in terms of this game, Kansas City, New England, look, I can't find a way to get New England on my card here. There's no way. I would ride this all the way up to 13.5, if I'm being honest. I think Kansas City, this is, we talked about punch me games. This is the ultimate punch me game. You're taking all that frustration from last week, and now you got this, I mean, essentially tackle dummy that's not going to move. It's just going to be an easy target. It just scares me how much of a no-brainer this seems. The way this year has gone, it's like I keep saying these words.
That's
and how,
exactly.
It's like I keep saying there. Everything tells me that there's no way this will happen. So I should probably pick New England. But, for the sake of this, I think Kansas City gets the job done. And I think we stay under here. Now, last week was one of the craziest quote unquote over unders. I think it ended or closed at 29.5. And the over hit at halftime. It was 21-10. It was one of the more like, what is going on moments. And then I think we saw 8 points in the second half, and it was like, okay, now we're back. But yeah, I think Kansas City defense gets after it. I think we stay under here. I could see Kansas City putting up 24 points, 27 points, shutting it down and winning 27-7.
Yeah.
And,
right.
and we're still home safe with the under. Probably not going to bet either side of this. Definitely not going to watch this game. But I'll tell you what, if somehow, some way New England wins this game, I think it's officially time to panic on the Chiefs. And I'm probably late on the panic button. I still think the Chiefs are going to be just fine. I think they'll probably still somehow win the AFC. And I think that's just because Patrick Mahomes in my head is just this Greek god. But if they lose this game, wow. But I don't think they will. I don't even think they yeah. I don't know. The more I talk about it, I feel like I'm talking myself into the Patriots. But
to Mahomes' credit, he's been doing what he usually does. But he can't make those guys catch the ball.
Amen. You're right. And what'll be really
even the running game, the running game has been fine.
And the defense, this is the best defense by far that Patrick Mahomes has ever had.
Yes.
Probably in his life. It's bewildering to see it going forward. But yeah, it just seems like some bad luck has bit them. But you know what? They're due for a little bit. It's like the Patriots. These are the two most privileged franchises in the modern NFL. So I don't want to hear any. And to be fair, all the Patriot fans that I know, they all are eating it, and they're all saying, "Yeah, we'll rest on our X number of rings, and accept how bad we are." So hopefully, Kansas City Chief fans get to that point as well. But moving on to Monday night, and this will be a maybe bar trivia question for you. But if it ever comes up, the first Monday night football game to get flexed, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are heading to Seattle. Fun fact, it was actually the game we just talked about before that was the Monday night game. You know how bad the Patriots have to be for ESPN to give up Patrick Mahomes, just to put that into perspective. But anyways, it'll be the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-3. They are going to be 4-point favorites. In this one, the over-under sits at 47.5. They're heading to Seattle to face the 6-7 Seahawks, two bird teams that are their wings have been clipped. They're not flying nearly as high as they were earlier this year. Obviously, I talked about what the Eagles did last week. I don't really have a pick for you. I don't really like to pick the Eagles, especially when they're favorites and all that stuff. I might do my emotional hedge that I always talk about, just because the Seahawks are the underdogs, but that has no actual, thought process behind it, just an emotional side of it. But on the Eagles side of things, I do wonder if maybe the hubris of this team caught up to them this offseason. Because obviously they lost their offensive and defensive coordinators, which does happen when you are really good, like they were last year, to head coaching jobs. Totally understandable. But they did 2 internal hires, 2 guys that have never been offensive or defensive coordinators. And it kind of seems like to me It's like giving the keys to a F1 car to a kid who just got his driver's license. I'm
Yeah.
not saying the kid can't drive the car. I'm just saying it's going to get pretty nasty before he figures it out. And once again, Sean Desai, I don't want to be too negative on these guys. Once again, they're 13 years or 13 games into their play calling careers. So, you know, but it's been bad. Brian Johnson on the other side, I'm wondering if he gets like a $50,000 bonus every time he calls a quarterback draw, because the Eagles are going to set records for designed quarterback draws. I think ever, even back to the 40s and 50s, they weren't running quarterback draws like they are here. Everyone says Jalen Hurts is hurt. I don't think he is, because even with Brian Johnson, I don't think they're running quarterback draws 5 times a game if he is that hurt. I just think the Eagles aren't holding on to the football. In this one, I think we go over. These are two defenses that aren't good. We are going to see rain, which I think is a positive, because I think it forces the Eagles to stick to the run for whatever reason. DeAndre Swift has looked really good this year, but they continue to want to get the ball to Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell. And I love those guys more than anybody, but DeAndre Swift is head and shoulders better than both of them. He's a big back. Feed him the football. And the Seahawks are really bad against the run. So I'm hoping that it forces the Eagles and that offensive, Brian Johnson, to run the football, like actually run the football, not a quarterback draw. Let me just preface that. And the quarterback draw works. I don't get me wrong, but feed DeAndre Swift. This is an interesting one. The rain complicates things. However, last week in the Baltimore Rams game, I took the under because of the rain, and that game was over at halftime, or nearly hit the over at halftime. So I don't know on this one. I'm going to say the over, just because I think 47.5 for two of statistically the worst defenses we've seen the last 4 weeks. I'm just going to say probably the over. I don't really have a game pick for you. Like I said, Eagles 4 points. I don't think the Eagles are 4 points better than a whole lot of teams, but at the same time, I could also be jaded, because while they did get their butts kicked the last 2 weeks, they got their butts kicked by teams that are both a lot better than the Seahawks. So I don't know. This is a tough one. I just hope I watch the whole game, because the last few weeks I've turned the game off early. So I'm just hoping to get to triple zeros for fourth quarter. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Eagles heading to face the Seahawks.
Yeah, this was the only game on the entire calendar for week 15 where it didn't say rain likely, maybe rain, chance of this. It pretty much has said it's going to rain. It is going to rain. And when it rains up there, it rains up there. And I think that is going to be the difference to keep the game under. I'll take a half a point, because I'm going to think it's going to stay under 48. But I will tell you, I think because of that, and if it becomes the battle of the sludge and everybody has to run the ball, because that's just going to be your best entry. You're not going to see stuff going. It's not going to be a vertical game. It's going to be off to the side. It's going to be small things off over the middle. But on this one, I think it's going to end up being that fabulous kicker you guys have. And I think he's the one that wins the game for them. So with that said, I think Seattle's going to have a fine offensive game. They know how to play in the weather up there. Give me Seattle to cover the spread by 4.5. I'll take 4.5 on that. Eagles will win the game, but I think they're going to have to bring the kicker out, and that's going to put them over the top. And I was just checking to see what the line is. Money line on this one has moved from 205 to 190. If you're interested in the money line bet on this one, and it has also, the spread has dropped down to 3.5.
Ooh, almost into Brandon territory.
We're this close.
We're almost there, and since it's working down, I feel like maybe I could play it a little safe and see what happens there. Hit it on both sides. Maybe Seattle +3 or +3.5, and the Eagles win by a field goal. Everyone's goes home happy.
But I'm going to look for that house that's given me 4 and take Seattle at 4.5. And again, I think it's going to stay under 48.
Yeah, that's a good call. I do wonder, and maybe there's already a prop bet out for this, but when do we get to the point where we're getting numbers on whether or not DK Metcalf gets ejected from football games? Because that guy, you got to hold it together better than that. Like, I know it's an emotional game, and we talked about Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that, but it seems like every other week he's the Draymond Green of the NFL.
I was just going to say, maybe he can take a
And
class with
Draymond, I
Draymond.
think, saw DK. Draymond saw DK on Sunday and went, "Oh, hold on, hold my beer. I'm just gonna punch this guy in the face for no reason." I don't follow the NBA or anything like that. But what is, like, that's one of the few things I know about the NBA. Steph Curry can shoot threes, LeBron never gets old, and Draymond Green's gonna punch somebody at some point in the season, maybe 3 or 4 times. But yeah, DK, I don't know. And Kyle Shanahan challenged his team. He said, "Hey, I have a Christmas present for whoever gets DK ejected." So maybe Sirianni does that as well. But moving on, we got Dallas. They'll be heading to Buffalo in maybe the best game of the weekend. It's going to be the 10-3 Cowboys at the 7-6 Bills. The Bills are 2-point favorites here. The over-under does sit at 50.5. Rain is expected, not snow, but rain. This is an interesting one. I'm just going to come out and say it. I got Dallas money line. And I understand it's a dome team heading back east. And I understand it's, hey, outside of the Eagles, this team hasn't really played well against, winning teams, things like that. But as much as it pains me to say it, the Cowboys look really good. And I think it's more than just the grass or the turf that they play on at home.
No.
I think it's more than that. And this is a game for the Bills. They need, but it won't eliminate them. But Dallas does need this one because their schedule down the stretch, I think they still play Detroit and Miami. So it's going to be a little hairy, including this one. I think they feel like they really need this. Big difference between the 2 and the 5 seed because that's what the Eagles and Cowboys are fighting for. Give me Dallas and the money line. And I know we see rain, and I'm probably going to kick myself that I'm taking back-to-back overs on rain games. But I think we see some points being scored here as well. I think you got 2 quarterbacks. I mean, Josh Allen, I think, he's going to chuck it no matter what. And, I could see Dak chucking it as well in the rain. It's a high number for a rain game. Maybe it comes down for me a little bit. I still like the over 50.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Dallas at Buffalo.
Yeah, to follow up on your questioning the schedule, they got Buffalo this week, of course. Then they're going to go stay on the road and go down to Miami. And then they go home, take on Detroit, and then they close out against the Commanders. So not too bad for a closeout game. I think they'll have a challenge against Detroit, but odds are they're going to be the favorite and they should fare well on that. But boy, this week, Buffalo and then go against Miami. Those are a couple teams. Miami, they may be in the top 2 or 3 right now in the AFC, but they've had to work. They've had to work, and they've got to be getting a little bit tired out there, but we'll see what happens 2 weeks away. But in this particular game, I agree with you. Dallas is just going to be too much. They will outmatch Buffalo. Buffalo's played real hard, played very good games the last few weeks, but Dallas is a different animal. You say, yeah, but Buffalo just took care of business against the Chiefs. Guess what? Dallas is better than the Chiefs.
Yep.
And they're going to see that. It's not going to come down to one last trick play. I think Dallas is going to have it in the bag, and there won't be 2 minutes left. It's not going to matter, I don't think, this week for the Buffalo Bills. 50.5. Wow. I think it's going to go over because even playing up in Seattle last week, the Cowboys and the Seahawks rolled up 70-something points, 76 points, I think it was. The question is, what about the spread? I'm with you. Give me Dallas and the money line all day long on this one. Give me over 50.5, and I think we're going to cash in that ticket.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Buffalo pulls this out, but the gambling man in me just refuses to go against the Cowboys, just especially on the basis, they can't win on the road. Oh, they can, and they have, and I think they will, unfortunately, for my Eagles again this week. Moving on, it's going to be the Washington Commanders. They're 4-9. They're heading out west to face the Los Angeles Rams, who are all of a sudden right in the thick of the NFC playoff picture, and maybe a team that not a whole lot of teams in the NFC want to play. But once again, I don't think they're anywhere near the three best teams. But the Rams are 6-7, and they're going to be 6.5-point favorites here at home. 50.5 is the over under. Look, Washington, I think they are in a state of, it's really hard to find a franchise that's more inevitable. I mean, we all know Ron Rivera, unfortunately, is probably going to be let go at the end of the season. It would have taken a miracle to keep him after the new ownership group came in. Not a whole lot of head coaches survive ownership changes, especially an ownership change that was as contentious as Washington's. And it's just, I mean, this is a team that 6 weeks ago traded their two best defensive players while they were somewhat in the mix for talking about the playoffs. I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought they would make the playoffs, but they were a little frisky. Give me the Rams here. Keep me under -7 or -7, or I'll take -6.5. Anything lower than 7, I'm in on the Rams. I think the Rams are playing much better. Puka Nacua might end up being one of the steals of the last 3 or 4 years. And guy. Cooper Kupp looks like he's started to kind of figure things out. The defense figuring things out. And Sean McVay's just a really good head coach. Like, there's just all there is to it. I still have a bitter taste in my mouth from that Super Bowl that just bored me to death a few years back, but it's a really good coach. I think it's a really good team. However, 50.5 points, I think that's way too much for any game that's including the Commanders. I'm sorry. I think the Rams can score 31 points and will still probably be okay for the staying under the 50.5. I don't think Washington scores a ton here. Like I said, outside of Eric Bieniemy, I think Eric Bieniemy might be the only person fighting for anything because he wants a head coaching job. But yeah, give me the Rams -6.5, under 50.5, just because I don't think the Commanders are going to do enough to get us over that number. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Commanders heading to LA.
Boy, you can pretty much sum it up with the Commanders. Commanders have the can proudly claim that they have been beaten twice by the New York Giants this year. But I will say, when we talk about points, they put up 31 points against. Actually, they put up 31 points against the Eagles.
Yeah,
and so they can do it. But the thing is, they are the model of inconsistency. They're actually on a streak right now. They've lost 6 of their last 7 games. Those games you're talking, they've scored 19, 26, 15. They're just at 10. No, they're not going to put up a lot of points this week. Will the Rams? Yeah, the Rams are going to put up a lot of points this week. I'm with you. Rams inside their own house. It's going to be, it might be a little bit of rain, but even at that, I don't think it's going to be enough to fall through the cracks of the roof and make anything happen. Give me the Rams like you, -6.5, but I'm going to take it also under 50.5, because I just don't see, I see them just manhandling the Washington offense, or the Washington offense just playing in an incompetent fashion.
Yeah, it's a little rough out there in Washington, but look, you talk to any Commanders fan, and the first thing they'll tell you is, well, at least when we go through this rebuild, we won't have to deal with Dan Snyder.
And now they're talking about possibly moving their home stadium.
That's, I believe, the Wizards, the basketball team, but that's definitely something, because look, FedEx Field is, by all accounts, the worst stadium in all of football. So, and that could be something. I don't know the exact logistics. Maybe we do see kind of a sports complex there. But yeah, that's the Wizard side of things. And I think it's kind of very similar to the Oakland to San Francisco move. It's just kind of over a bay or a lake or whatever they call those things out there on the back east. So, but moving on, staying in the NFC East, it's the frisky New York Giants and every Italian-American superhero, Tommy DeVito. Him and the Giants, they're 5-8. They will be heading to the Superdome to face the New Orleans Saints. We're 6-7. Look, the Saints are 6-point favorites in this one. The over-under sits at 39. Look, a few weeks ago, month ago, I was making jokes about, getting Tommy DeVito mixed up with Danny DeVito, things like that. He's really turned it around. He looks like a legitimate, at the very least, a backup quarterback. I don't think you can expect to win a whole lot of games with him, outside of a lot of help around him, almost like a Niners type situation. That's how much talent I think he'll need to really be a Super Bowl contending quarterback. But this is a lot of fun. And I for the Giants, obviously a lot of Italians out there in the New Jersey and back east area. They're having a lot of fun. The Tommy Cutlets, all that stuff. I don't know if you saw what his agent was wearing on Monday Night Football. But after I'll send it to you, I promise you, if you didn't know, you would have thought that is a character from The Sopranos. They're leaning into it, and I love it. Look, I don't think this guy's gonna have too many opportunities to market himself like this. I like it. Everyone gets mad. Oh, they show his parents. That's not his parents' fault. Once again, it's going back to the Taylor Swift thing. Get mad at the producers of the telecast, not the family. They have every right to be there, watch their kid play, and enjoy when their kid's playing well. With that being said, I think the Giants can get this one. The Saints are incredibly inconsistent. Yeah. And if they are consistent, it's because they've not been good. I don't know if they've won back-to-back games this year. They're 6-7 in a division that has essentially rolled out the red carpet for them, and they've just kicked it over multiple times. I'm gonna take the Giants plus 6.5. I will buy a half a point. However, this might be a sprinkle of a money line. There's something in me. There's something going on in New York, and I don't know how long it lasts. Brian Dable, he's righted the ship or righted the ship. And I've been impressed with what I've seen out of them. Unfortunately, 4 weeks ago, the end of the Eagles season going Giants, Cardinals, Giants looked like, woo. Now it's like, oh, I mean, I still feel okay, but there might be some complications, at least one of those games against the Giants. But with that being said, yeah, I like the Giants here. Over under a 39. Look, I think if the Giants are going to win this game, I do think they're going to have to score some points. The quarterback situation with the Saints, I don't even feel like I look anymore just because it seems like I know Derek Carr's hurt. Is he going to start? Who knows? We'll find out on Sunday. Will he finish the game? Probably not. And we'll have to deal with Jameis Winston. Yeah, it just seems the flow chart of Saints games this year. So I am going to take the under. I don't know. 39 for both of these teams is as much as I'd like to see Tommy DeVito. They kind of struggled to get to 24 points against the Packers. I don't think they'll need to get that much this week over the Saints. So give me the under. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Giants at Saints.
Yeah, go back to the middle of these first 14 weeks, and New Orleans did beat the Colts, and they beat the Bears back to back. And since then, they have lost 3 of 4. They've lost to the Vikings, they've lost to the Falcons, they've lost to the Lions, and they did beat Carolina, which, okay, so you should have. On the other hand, Giants had their bye week, and prior to that, they had a 2-game winning streak, came back and won another one. Giants are playing for pride right now. They've got nothing to lose to go all out and really just make it miserable for people. And sometimes those are the teams you don't want to play. And as much, you have said it, nobody wants to win the Saints division.
Yeah.
They just keep handing it back and forth between them and Atlanta, and New Orleans, they just have not been able to put it together. I think very much like you, give me 6.5. I'll take the Giants because I think the Giants are going to come out, and I think they're going to score some points, 21 to 24 points. Now, can the Saints, because the Saints get anemic on the offensive side of the ball. So even at 24, they would have to score 2 touchdowns. That only puts us at 38. And you got to believe that Derek Carr can do better than that, or whoever. Can they get 17 points? So with that said, looking at a 24 to 17 game, give me the Giants minus 6.5 or plus 6.5, and give me over 30. I'll go half point down and give me over 38.5.
Yeah, it's probably a good call. I think there's, especially in the dome too. Points.
The Giants are doing something right now.
They are,
like you said.
And it scares me because this is a team that, look, if they can do enough to convince Saquon Barkley, hey, you want to retire a Giant? And the other part of this too is everyone's saying, oh, Daniel Jones must be, bummed that he's losing his job right now. I look at it the other way. I don't think Tommy DeVito is better than Daniel Jones. But if the Giants had say the Giants had lost these past 3 games and they're staring at a 2-11, and guess what they're looking at? The number 2 overall pick. Now Daniel Jones has to worry because guess what? There's a chance that Drake May or Caleb Williams is better than Daniel Jones. I don't know the answer to that question. But I think the fact that DeVito has kind of won a few games, it's almost like now they're like, okay, well, unless a quarterback somehow drops to us, we might just have to take the best player available. And Daniel Jones's contract, it's not going to be easy to get away from, at least right away. I think you probably got to sit on him for at least 1 or 2 more years before you can kind of cut ties with him and not eat a ton of dead money. But yeah, the Giants, the Eagles' luck. They're getting hot at the time right before we were thinking that the easy part of our schedule was coming up, but we shall see. Moving on to a close contender for game of the week. This is going to be a Sunday night football matchup. It is the Baltimore Ravens, top team in the AFC at 10-3. They are going to be 3-point favorites as they face the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars struggling a bit. They are 8-5, still holding down first place, and I believe was the 4 seed in the AFC playoff picture. And the over-under on this one sits at 42.5. This is Sunday Night Football. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Ravens at Jacksonville.
I think Trevor Lawrence is hurt.
Yeah.
And he is not 100%. And this is not, he got hurt a few weeks back. But again, he's a competitor and he has come back out. At the same time, they've lost 3 of their last 5. And they've lost to Cincinnati. They lost to Cleveland back-to-back. They've got back-to-back losses going right now. And then they couldn't take care of business, which, they're surrounded by good company. They couldn't take care of business against the 49ers. They did beat Tennessee, and they beat Houston. Okay. That's not big feathers in your cap. And you're going against Baltimore, who wants to hang on to that top seed. And so looking at things and the way Baltimore's playing right now, -3, maybe I'll look at the money line on this one for Baltimore, but I think Baltimore definitely wins this one. 42.5. I would say, because I'm not seeing that weather's going to be an issue, give me over 42.5 in this one, maybe over 42. Let's see. Let me look real quick here and see if there's been any change on the, nope, still 42.5 and minus, they actually have it at -3.5 for Baltimore right now. The line is at 164, so that's not bad. So I would take that. I'll probably take money line Baltimore. Give me over 42.5 on this one, though. I think there's going to be some points on the board.
Yeah, that's I do think Baltimore gets the job done here as well. I am a little concerned with Baltimore, though. It hasn't, well, I mean, early on, yes. But this is a team that they don't really put people away. And I feel like, look, I think they're a lot better than the Rams. Now, the Rams played them very tough. I'm not saying the Rams are a bad team, but I don't think they should have had to go to overtime against them. And I don't know if you can go back the past few weeks and, even to their losses. And going back the past few years, it's kind of been the way the Ravens have dealt with things. And I felt like last year they started like 2-3, but they had, through 5 games, they trailed for like a grand total of 45 seconds in those 5 games. It was just things like where they just somehow gave games away. I don't know if that's going to be the case here. I'm with you, though. I do like Baltimore. Money line does sound good. I think they possibly could win by field goal, especially you don't feel bad when Justin Tucker is essentially that spread, if you will. But I like Baltimore to get the job done. Jacksonville reeling a bit. They have some room to maneuver. I don't think anyone else in the AFC South is really going to run them down, especially with CJ Stroud. Looks like he's going to be out for a little bit with that concussion. So I think Jacksonville, they're not going to get past Kansas City, so they're pretty much locked in at the 4 seed. But yeah, I think Baltimore, they know, look, we have a lot to play for. That 1 seed would be massive. Lamar Jackson getting an extra week of rest, I think, would be really nice.
Absolutely.
But yeah, give me Baltimore. Yeah, give me Baltimore.
And maybe even that if they have a big enough cushion going into the end of the season, Let him play the first
And
half
they
and let him
should.
sit down after that.
If they win out and they head into that last weekend, I'm not looking too far ahead, but they should. If they have a 1-game lead, I think they probably have tiebreakers on the other teams that they could say, you know what, it's been clinched. We can sit them down, or at least play the first half and look at what's going on somewhere else and go, okay, we can sit them down. But yeah, that's a good point. Might even get 3 extra week or turn it into kind of a 3-week bye for Lamar. In terms of the over under, you know, I feel like I'm the opposite every time with Baltimore. I feel like they're going to put points up and then they don't, and I feel like they're going to control the clock and then they throw the ball all over the field. But I do like the over here. Sunday Night Football. I think it was a 30% chance of rain, but it's in Jacksonville, so weather like cold won't be an issue. Yeah, 31% chance of rain. But we saw Baltimore play in a rain game last week, put plenty of points up. I like the over in this one. So, final game we'll be talking about. It is the Battle of the Bays, and despite what the records show you, this kind of has some playoff implications going forward. It is the Tampa Bay. Both of these teams are 6-7. Just get that out of the way. Tampa Bay is heading to Green Bay to face the Packers. The Packers are 3-point favorites in this one. The over-under is 41.5. I don't believe we're going to have any precipitation, but I do believe I put cold weather game. It's going to be, it says about 40 degrees. The only reason I put cold weather is cold weather for Tampa. I that's barbecue weather in Wisconsin, 41 degrees in late December. They'll love that in Wisconsin, but I don't think Tampa will. Something to keep in mind. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Tampa heads to Green Bay in a matchup that, one of these teams, well, at least Tampa, someone's got to win the NFC South, and someone's got to get that last wild card. So who knows? But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny because the first thing I thought when I looked down at this one right before you spoke, I was just like, we're going to talk about two teams that are 6-7 and the game has playoff implications. Are you kidding?
Big time.
Back to my point, is football, has it been diluted? And all season long, I have talked about inconsistency, and the Packers are the poster children for inconsistency. Which Packer team is going to show up? The one that beats the Chargers, the one that beats the Raiders, or the guys that lose the game last week? I mean, you just don't know which team is going to be out there. But I think this time at home with playoffs on the line, it actually is probably going to be a pretty well played game on both sides of the ball. But I think Green Bay is going to. It's kind of like going out to those golf courses, I guess. I'm not a golfer, but they say if you play a course enough, you know all the slopes, you know where the divots are in certain places. And you just are able to read the greens a little better. And so I think that's going to play to advantage of the Packers. -3, why not? Give me that half point. Let's do that on this one. We'll take the Packers -2.5. Over under, I'm going to take a half point and keep it under 42 because I just don't know that there's going to be a lot of points on the board with this one.
Yeah, I feel like, the kids are, you would grab a flower and take a petal. She loves me. She loves me not. She loves me. She loves me not. I feel like that's what you do with Jordan Love. Jordan Love's a franchise quarterback. Jordan Love sucks. Jordan Love's a franchise quarterback. Jordan Love sucks. Because it seems like, 2 weeks ago after what he did against Kansas City, it's like, uh-oh, here we go. Bears fans are over here going, how do you go from Favre to Rodgers to now Love, blah, blah, blah. I think he's probably somewhere in the middle. I don't think he sucks, but I also don't think he's a franchise quarterback. But yeah, inconsistency for sure. And not only does this game have playoff implications, it has division implications, at least on Tampa Bay's side of things. Still very much, actually, I think they control their destiny. Yeah, after they beat Atlanta last week, they technically controlled their own destiny to win the division, which is very, very interesting. But this is a tough one. Look, the line's -3, so I think everyone knows what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a half a point. Two inconsistent teams. I'm going to buy half a point and take the points. Give me Tampa Bay +3.5 and the over-under on this one. I like that. I like buying a half a point there as well. Get under 42. I mean, we're talking about 6 touchdowns. Does anyone see 6 touchdowns in this game? I don't. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm breaking this one down. If a late field goal comes in and, gets me that way, I'll deal with it then. But I just think these are two teams that they're kind of like gearing up, getting really excited to, get into the playoffs. And then they're going to see who they're going to play and go, oh, maybe it would have been best if we got our off season started a week earlier, but someone's got to win. And this is also too, I always like to think back, some of, my younger friends who, only know the 32 team NFL. But I remember, telling my brother, yeah, there was a time where there were only 31 teams and every week a team had a bye. So that means week 1, a team would have a bye, or week 17, a team would have a bye. Or we had really weird division alignments where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers were division rivals somehow in the NFC Central. Somehow Tampa Bay is in the Central, according to the NFL. But we also had the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC West. So that's a rabbit hole you want to go down if you're a younger fan of the NFL. A lot of interesting stuff before the Houston Texans came in and made it 32 teams. But yeah, so yeah, give me a real long way of me saying Tampa Bay plus 3.5 and under 42. But that's all we have for you on this edition of the NFL Weekly. Raider Jim, final thoughts.
Final thoughts, and every now and then we have to bring up one that's not too pleasant. And as a young boy, when I first got introduced to football, when there was only the AFL and the NFL, I was very fortunate. I used to get to go to games and watch the original AFL teams play, including then the San Diego Chargers, who really got my attention. And man, when I got to go see those Chargers play, those were the real Chargers. They were the superchargers before Dan Fouts ever came around to play for the Chargers. And this week we had the passing of one of the best defensive backs that ever played for the Chargers. His name was Kenny Graham. He, along with another guy in the backfield, Leslie Speedy Duncan, were quite a tandem in the defensive backfield for those Chargers. He passed away, and it's a another tragic story. He was 80, 82, something like that. Spent the last few months of his life in real bad state. It was basically the same symptoms, conditions as dementia. At one point, he checked himself out of a facility. His family could not find him. It ended up in his early 80s. This guy survived on the streets for 72 hours, no food, no nothing, no shelter. And then they were able to get him and bring him back, and at least he was safe and safe and comfortable, I guess is the best way to put it. But again, they say all of this, his family has stated, all of this does go back to CTE. And it's very real. And that's why when I say, as good as the Dolphins are doing this year, when I see Tua go back out there, wow, I hope these guys really weigh it, and I wish the organizations would weigh it on a positive. The family did say that the NFL very much took care of Kenny when he really needed it, took care of medical expenses and things like that. So there's no issues with that part of the story, but a real tragedy and a real great guy. And again, one of the original superchargers, and condolences to his family. And they speak of him with fond memories. And I know his teammates that are still around here in San Diego also had nothing but very nice things to say. So blessings to Kenny Graham and his family.
Amen. Yeah, that's a tough one. Obviously, that is kind of the dark part of the sport. I mean, my favorite player, Junior Seau, obviously, it's pretty well documented, everything he went through and what the game of football, kind of did. But it does get a little tough, but it is a game that we all love. Even though both myself and Raider Jim exchanged texts this past weekend where we both admitted we hate football, but that's mainly because of our own teams, rather than that stuff. But with that being said, it always blows my mind how quick the NFL season goes. And this is probably the third time I brought this up on the final thoughts, but just enjoy it. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're getting to the points where, we got to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. Well, it's going to be to a point where all we have to talk about is one game or two games. And you're going to kind of miss it on that side of it. So just enjoy it, especially this weekend. 3 games on Saturday, X number of games on Sunday, and then a really good one, hopefully, on Monday night as well. So keep an eye there. And then one final thing, don't want to keep Raider Jim too long because it looks
No,
like
no.
the Raiders are absolutely putting on a show. Unfortunately, Raider Jim isn't able to see, but just scored another touchdown, possibly about to go up 21-0. But with that being said, thank you all
Oh,
so
there's
much.
another half to play.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm worried about. I'm like, if we end this and Raider Jim turns this game on, it's 21-0 and it ends 24-21. I will never forgive myself. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to y'all very soon. Take care.
Be safe.